how is Goan architecture different from architecture in other coastal areas of India?
Distinctly different with Goa is, I think, on a more emotional level, the vibe. I guess, design, fancy villa, architecture, all that is kind of secondary. I guess it's the way the space or the place makes you feel.
What are the popular areas, Jugal, in Goa? Like, what would you invest if you had one area to choose in Goa? Where would you invest? Jugal, where do you see Goa real estate going in general? And a follow-up question to that is, are Airbnb owners there actually making money? Because there's so much supply in Goa already.
Airbnb is still in demand, and I guess vacation rentals are doing well in Goa. We are seeing enough queries on new developers who want to launch projects or who want to build just to rent out.
Any material that is a strict no-no to use in a coastal area?
That's a tough one.
Or a particular material you just don't like working with? Is there anything that you just don't like, a certain type of material?
I would say cement blocks. I just find them very mundane.
Right.
I don't think they help in the insulation of the building. They are more popular in urban areas, where a builder wants to erect a 50-floor tower and it's really fast.
Can you tell us what an ex-urban location means?
The space between the rural and the urban. So it's like, these are two extremes, and what is in between, which is again ever shifting. This boundary is also ever shifting. So what Alibag used to be like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and now, it's obviously now the shape is being redefined. The entire territories are like pushing inward.
Absolutely.
So these are ex-urban locations.
Right. So rural becomes ex-urban, which becomes urban.
Yes.
What do you prefer? You prefer hill view or sea view?
To be on a hill with a sea view.
You want both?
Both.
What would be the construction cost of constructing a villa in Goa?
If you're kind of dividing the two, the civil and the interior finishing. So the civil costs anywhere between 1,500 rupees to 2,000 rupees.
That's just for the RCC?
That's just for the skeleton.
Right.
And then for the interiors, if it's obviously a private home, it's like far more. There's no limit. I can't even define it right now.
Yeah.
But if you are looking at a development, it costs around at least 8 to 10,000 rupees on a square feet.
Hi guys, welcome to yet another episode of the Real Estate Show with Mayank. And today's guest is actually one of the first design architects sitting on this hot seat. Let's welcome Jugal Mistri. Hi guys, welcome to yet another episode of the Real Estate Show with Mayank. And today's guest is actually one of the first design architects sitting on this hot seat. Let's understand the nuances of design from him today. He's a third generation architect who's worked in both urban, rural and exotic locations, designed multiple villas. Let's welcome Jugal Mistri.
Hi Mayank.
Hi Jugal, great to be in your studio, very neat, clean studio. I think this studio is a extension of your work.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And it looks fantastic. I'm sure clients will be very pleased when they come here. Easier for you to close clients out here?
Absolutely, yeah. And welcome. You're the first guest, first podcast in this studio. So we are really happy, honored to have you here.
Awesome. Likewise, you're the first design architect that's, interacting with us in our, series of our podcast. And we learn a lot of, the finer nuances of designing from you today. So super excited. By the way, I got you something.
Wow, that's a surprise.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
This is truly a surprise.
I got you something. Hope you enjoy it.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much.
Sweets. And this is, I know how big you are on sustainability. This is part of our green initiative, a plant from our side.
Sure, as you can see, we have a few plants in the
probably
studio.
Add this to this collection.
Absolutely.
So Jugal, how did you get into architecture? Let's just cut to the chase.
So I'll give you a long and short answer. Short answer, I couldn't do anything better.
Right.
And I was always very creative.
Right.
The long answer is like pretty much all of my family was into the creative profession, right from my grandfather who established the firm here in South Bombay, pre-independence. And so I grew up seeing architects in my family. My father used to have a big furniture workshop. So I used to kind of go and look at how things get built. So it was always like that little inspiration, and also the fact that I just wanted to draw. It was like really a straightforward answer and a straightforward career move to sort of study architecture.
Right. Implement art in buildings, basically.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
So do you think you can actually even teach someone design, or do you think it comes naturally?
Yeah, I mean it's a mix of both. You need to have some level of skill set, right? You need to know how to articulate your ideas on paper, but at the same time, yes, there are it's the only course, by the way, the Bachelor's of Architecture only course that's a 5 years course. So in those 5 years, you have to learn a lot of technicalities, right? How to draw, how to understand material, how to understand joineries, how do things come together, right? And most importantly, like what kind of a structure is a stable structure,
right?
Which is the most important, like, logical bit of the whole kit of parts.
Marrying both technical aspects, practical aspects, and design aspects into one thing, right?
Yes.
I think that's architecture.
Yes, which is why it takes so long. It's a brutal course. It's not for the light-hearted. You don't get sleep. It's very stressful. And we've always start off as a class of, let's say, 45, and by the time you graduate, there's barely, I guess, 20, 22.
Oh, no way. A lot of dropouts?
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Just in the first year, you'll start seeing, the whole filtration happening.
Right. So speaking of stress, right, and sleepless nights, like you mentioned, what were the challenges that you faced as an architect in your early days in your career?
I guess in your early days, so for me it was slightly different. I was not in the country for a while. I was living in the US, and I had just come back. So it's been now 12 years that I'm back. So I guess initially it's all about building your own network and spreading the word that, hey, I'm around, and this is what I do. And I guess 12 years ago we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have social media as aggressive as it is now. So that is the initial challenge. And so basically you just pick whatever comes your way. And so we ended up doing a lot of inconsequential or consequential interior design projects that were kind of 300 square feet here, 500 square feet here. So if I like walk down that lane in Bandra KFC, like I know literally all of those shopkeepers, and they
That's
know
a very hot lane, by the way. Like
yeah.
lot of stuff there.
Yeah. So because that's what we started doing as a firm, just to kind of get the ball rolling and get slightly recognized in the market.
Right. Now you like you mentioned, and I'm sure this happens to a lot of architects initially in their formative initial years in their careers. They tend to do a lot of interior designing work. Is that annoying for an architect, because you want to also be designing the structure per se and not just the interiors of a house? Is that annoying for an architect?
Not. I guess annoying is a slightly harsh term, or maybe a strong term. But yes, I guess after a point you do feel limited, because you are equipped when you study architecture. They teach you skill sets at another level, right? And so you are sort of equipped with all the tools, all the knowledge to create larger spaces on land, right? And different topographies, different terrains, and then cut to you are in like this small boxy environment, trying to craft something beautiful, and so it becomes slightly limiting in your daily experience.
Right. Now you have a degree of urban design from Columbia University, right?
That's correct.
Of course, the prestigious Columbia University. But did it actually help you from a design element? Did your design sense improve because of that degree, or was it just that fancy tag of Columbia University?
So it's funny, when I enrolled, I got into Columbia. So there is this initial 1 week window where if a student has a change of heart, and if you want to like change to another program, you can, right? And I was always like, by nature, I always loved doing things more in isolation, where I'm dealing with one building at a time. And the urban design program, they just throw you into large groups. It's more of a collaborative setup. So there is no guarantee that your classmates are going to be architects. We had writers, we had guys who were artists, some were activists, so it was like a whole host of people. And so for the first 1 week, I was just wondering, what the hell is going on? And I just missed that window by like a day or two to switch into the hardcore architectural program. And then I just had to basically sail through the entire year. But having said that, yes, I think education never goes waste. And what it taught me is the whole idea of working in collaboration with different people from different backgrounds.
Which is real life scenarios.
Exactly, yeah. So in real life, in design, like when we are sitting on a table, there's an MEP consultant, there's a structural consultant, there is someone who has knowledge about Vastu.
Right.
And so how do you bring all
The
these
entire
ideas together
consortium, right.
into a successful outcome, right?
Right.
So these are things that I really picked up at Columbia,
Right.
and I guess they stay with me even today.
Right. So do you think Western education is more application based, even in architecture, as opposed to Indian universities?
I guess it's more about the strategy. I guess they focus a lot on strategy, and it's obviously you need to have the technique to translate your ideas into drawing. But I guess it's more of a dialogue where they want to filter out the best of the best, right? So that's how it works.
Right. Now you've chosen your office in Worli. I mean, it's a great office. Looks really pretty cool. Any specific reason why you chose Worli?
So yeah, again, I'll kind of so give the more sort of business point of view reason was all the clients are here, all the consultants are here. We are also like in the middle of this mix of the new density, right? So we can see all the towers there, that are cropping up in Worli. All the large scale stuff is happening here. So we really wanted to be in the mix of things, right? If you see, Raghuvanshi Mills is right around the corner where we've got all the resources, all the vendors are there, right? So anything new that comes up in the market is right here. But on a more sort of personal level, so when we started looking for an office, this is like post-COVID time, I was like talking to every broker that's out there, and for a year, literally everything from Lower Parel to Worli, Jugal knew, or the broker knew Jugal.
Right.
And, we had basically reached a stage where none of them wanted to answer my calls. And so we were really focusing on industrial estates for three reasons. One is, we wanted the height. We wanted empty galas, right? And we wanted a lot of natural light, right? So I wasn't like asking for a lot.
Right.
But that quest just kind of cascaded into like a year of search, and ultimately one day I was so frustrated. This broker showed me something really horrible around the corner, and I just kind of got into my car. I told my driver, just drive, and accidentally he came to this lane, this building, and I was like, just wait, this looks like an office building. Let me go inside, and without any idea about what's in there, I just walked into the society office, and I was like, do you have any office? I'm looking for an office space. And this guy's like, yes, we've got something on the 4th floor. And as I'm like taking the elevator up, I'm suddenly reminded that I've been here in this building at some point of time.
Some deja vu.
Yeah.
Basically.
And suddenly struck me that I did my first internship in this building like 21 years ago.
That's cool. So
with
life come a
Kapadia.
full circle.
Yeah,
Huh?
exactly.
Wow.
So once I saw this space, and once I was able to connect the dots, I was like, this is it. This is what we want.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And when did you get this office?
We moved here last
space?
year. Yeah.
Oh, last year.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you must be having a lot of clients from this, part of Mumbai.
Yes.
And what kind of clients do you generally work with? Are they individuals, builders? What's your clientele like?
So we work with a full spectrum, but we are largely focusing on two categories. One is the HNI, so the private homeowner or the individual that wants to kind of create something for the future generation. So this can either be a farmhouse, it can be a clubhouse or a private residence. And the second category is developers. So we work with developers both within the city and outside Mumbai.
Right. Yeah. You had mentioned, when we were talking a little earlier, that a lot of your clients keep coming back to you. Like there are clients who build like three villas through you, individuals, not just builders, right? So how does that happen? How do you retain those clients?
Yes. So for a company like ours, that does very limited work a year. because we want to focus on that quality over quantity, and also the kind of projects we do, the kind of money clients spend behind the projects. They need that personal attention and detail. So within the few clients that we work with, we do a lot of repeat work, and that's essentially because we've showcased, they've had success with us, they're happy with the final outcome. And also these are like large industrial families who are just growing, right? I mean, it's like that's like the story of life, right? You're growing, your sons are growing, or your future generations growing, they're moving out, someone's getting married in some other city. So the home base is now shifting to another location. So we've been kind of fortunate enough to be part of those journeys with different clients in different locations. And this ranges, to answer your question, this ranges from Delhi, UP, up in the north, to more locally Bombay, and down south. So it's like this interesting geography that we've been oscillating over the years.
That's all over actually, from North India to western region of India. It's pretty cool.
Yes.
And so as an architect, right, what are the must-haves or the important clauses in your client agreements? Any important points?
So firstly, they have to pay us on time.
I don't think anyone in real estate gets that. Yeah, but yes, please continue.
Yeah, and I guess more importantly, I'll start from the back, and then come forward. So the one non-negotiable term with every client is the last mile packaging, which is where the beauty and the finesse of the project really comes out. And so while we do things very efficiently, very quickly, we try and ask the client to slow down when it's time for finishing the project. So we want to pay attention to detail, we want to identify errors, we want to rectify those errors, because a lot of time what happens is during handovers the client gets impatient. There are buyers who want the keys to their homes, and then everything is let's just roll, let's just hand over. And that's where you start seeing shabby stuff, finishing complaints, stuff like that. So that last mile packaging is where we really go camp out there at the site. We want to look at everything. We want to ensure that everything is designed and built as per the drawings, and then finally do that very respectful handover to the client.
Right.
So that is one of our key terms in our contract. Besides that, I guess we also like to stay slightly structured in our communication. So it's not like random in terms of who's calling who's messaging who, and then there is this whole kind of little tension that one is not responding. So we try to structure our communication in terms of when are we going to have design meetings, when are we going to have site meetings. Let's just have a full map right on how to do it and when to do it. So it just streamlines the whole process for everybody, because it's not just me. There's a Vastu consultant, there's a structural consultant, MEP, they all need to travel with me, right? So when 4 consultants are coming together in one particular location, it might as well be productive for everyone, right? So communication is really important, how you do it.
Right. Yeah. Do you also have a certain kind of termination clause with clients?
Yes, we do. Luckily, we haven't had the chance to use it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's a good problem.
Yes. But in architecture, it's really weird. This is like this unsaid thing. A lot of times, when the client is not too sure about an architect, or when he's outrightly confused about what he wants, what they do is they start shopping. They'll approach 3 different architects, for a concept. Now, luckily, we are in a day and age where architects have stopped working for free.
Does it happen where in the middle of course, the product life cycle from design to construction, right? How many changes do you allow? I'm sure clients must be telling you something right now, especially with interiors as well, right? If you're giving a full turnkey, do clients keep changing what they want, and does that kind of increase your possession date with them?
Yeah. So, I've always strongly believed that, if you are upfront with your client, if you're honest and transparent on your process, one can avoid changes. And as an office, and this is something we have in our contract as well, that we are not an office that does options. Because options is a very common term used, in our industry. मुझे options दिखाओ, right? So instead, what we tell the client is that, look, we are going to attack one idea, we are going to explore one idea, but we will not give up till that idea is successful, till you like it, till I like it. And so if it means that I have to do like 12 iterations of that one single idea, we will, right? Without you telling us. So in that, with that approach, we are able to save a lot of our time and the clients, and then we ultimately end up doing things we really like, as opposed to just churning out ideas for the heck of.
Right.
Because then they are, half-assed, and they are not, they are not things you're proud about. You just.
That's interesting. So at least you're delving within the same idea, within the same concept.
Yes.
Rather than changing the concept altogether, because that could be a nightmare.
Correct. For example, there's a courtyard house, right?
Right.
So we are saying, okay, we are going to do a square courtyard, and the house is built around it. So this is one typology, right?
Right.
There could be an L-shaped house as well. So what we are saying is that within that courtyard, I'm going to do 12 courtyards.
Right.
But I will not go from this courtyard to an L to a C, and just doing things so that you feel that I'm working.
Understood.
Yeah.
Now, can you talk to us about the entire product life cycle journey, right? With regards to your involvement with the client. For example, from scratch, how do you start? So, of course, from the land acquisition stage, to the designing, conceptualizing, construction stage, to the post-construction stage. When do you enter? Now, has it happened where the clients just buy the land first and then they come to you, and turns out the land is quite ridiculous, or do you enter at that stage as well?
So in most cases, the client has bought the land, but not necessarily it's a ridiculous land, or it's not a land that we don't like. So step one is, they've bought the land, they know what they want, they have a design brief,
right?
And that's when they approach us. Or if they don't have a brief, then we'll ask them to prepare a brief, right? With our current clients, we are at a stage where before they lock in on a land, they invite us. We will fly down to the location. They want that additional advice on whether it's a good piece of land or not, right? Because before us is a Vastu approval that every client prefers to have.
Absolutely.
So he's already done that, and that's when they call us that, okay, you know what, my Vastu consultant has okayed it. I just want you to come and see, if this is really exciting to you, right? So that is our current relation with the current clients. But with the new clients, in most cases, they've bought a land. So they've bought the land, we've seen the land, everything is okay. We get the design brief. That's step number 2, which is the most important, because that is something we look at surgically. What exactly is he asking for? What kind of spaces? Is he talking of multiple living rooms? Is he talking of, additional amenities? What kind of kitchen does the family want? Everything, right? And so basis that, we'll prepare like a quotation, like our design fees. We'll prepare an entire list of drawing deliverables with a timeline, right? And we'll tell them, okay, these are the consultants we are going to need on your project, right? And so once everybody's onboarded is when we start the design process, right? And that takes, so the concept takes around 2 months, 1 to 2 months, depending on where we are. And once the concept is approved, we start doing more detailed drawings. That's when we start sharing our drawings with the other consultants for their inputs. So that kind of, in total, is like a 4 months process.
Now, who brings these other consultants together? Is it the architect and the client, or predominantly the client?
It's flexible. So, if the client doesn't have anyone, we are happy to recommend guys we've worked with and we know are reliable. And, if our clients like builders, who are experienced, who have a good resource bank, they have their own teams. So we are happy to work with them as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And after the during the construction, what's the?
So yeah, construction, again, it's very important what time of the year you are starting the project, right?
Yeah.
So like obviously, for us in Maharashtra or even the whole coastal belt, monsoon is like a big big deal.
Right.
So if you want to save time, then I always advise my clients to start like as early as November, October end.
Because you just kind of completed the monsoon.
Correct.
It's a fresh start.
Yes. So
there'll be about
Yeah, so we've got to be ready with the drawings, with everybody on board. Everything is finalized, signed. you're just ready to hit the site.
So November is a great time to start a
Yes,
project, to
absolutely.
start the construction
Yes.
activities.
So when the rest of the world is vacationing and taking a break is when we start our
Right.
real work. So November is like a very important month for us.
Right.
We were just in Goa 2 weeks ago where we started a
And
new
we're in
site.
November right now.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
Yeah, busy month, I'm guessing. for you.
Yes, yes. So we just started a new apartment project. So, the line out was done, everything was
Right.
checked. So the civil work takes around 6 months, which is the exterior skeleton, right? That's all your RCC column beam. And once that is complete.
That is for a G+1 structure for a villa?
G+1, G+2 as well.
Right.
Yeah, you could do that for a standalone villa or even a bunch of villas. So
Right.
it's depending on the strength of the contractor.
Right.
Yeah, we don't foresee it extending beyond 6 to 8 months. After 6 to 8 months is when the real work, the finishing work starts, which is the interiors of the space. So that would include your plumbing, tiling, electrical, false ceiling, all of that. So depending on the scale of the house, we estimate around 8 to 12 months for the interior finishing.
Right.
Yeah. So all in all, we are looking at a 16-month to a 24-month journey with any particular client.
The entire.
Yes, yes. So, which is also a very clear message that architecture is a patience game.
Right.
For one to do anything publish worthy, you have to wait a while. You have to put in those months and hours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Long
Yes.
turnaround time.
Absolutely.
And speaking of which, what are your systems in place once the handover is done?
So it actually starts slightly before the handover, where that all the snagging is done, and so just before the handover, we know that there are some pain points that need to be addressed, and so we give something called an escalation matrix, which is essentially all the agencies identified who did what, where did the material come from, where did the white goods come from, all the warranty. So it's like an entire kind of filing system that is handed over to the client, and so if there are any issues, they can directly reach out to those agencies and get the repairs done, or anything that needs fixing is done.
Right.
Yeah.
So generally, I'm sure for different contractors they'll give you different warranties, but for leakage, is there a particular amount of the year warranty that
Yes.
is provided to?
So it ranges from 5 to 10 years.
Got it. Yeah, fair. And I've heard this from multiple architects that no architect would take responsibility for the contractor's work.
Right.
So how do you shortlist the right contractor to work with? Is it again the architect or the client, or how do you do this?
It's again, I think, a mutual effort, a combined effort. But you're right, in terms of architects taking onus or responsibility for an external entity, right? Because it's a different business, the billing is different, right? They get paid directly, right? It's not your company's liability to be responsible for a leakage somewhere, or something collapsing, right? But so we always work hand in hand with the client. We will maybe recommend 2 or 3 names. The client has someone from their side, and first and foremost, we'd like to see their built works. The project.
So you do have that process as well. Where
Absolutely,
before
yes.
you're getting in, let's say bed with the contractor, you're kind of seeing all his work.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's where you understand the finesse and the finishing. How long did he take, and then we also try to visit an ongoing site of the contractor. So you'll just understand the team capacities. What kind of systems do they follow.
What are some things that you look at in a contractor? Some qualities that you want from your contractor?
So they've definitely got to be kind of technically aware of what we are proposing, right? So we may draft dreams on a paper, but they've got to understand it.
The reality, yes.
That if this wall is at this angle, how am I going to cast it, right?
Right.
Or if there are these 16 pipes that change their degrees, how am I going to do the line projections, right?
Right.
So a lot of it is technical that they need to understand. I also like a little bit of flexibility and wiggle room in terms of, they have to be open to accept mistakes. If mistakes happen, it's very normal. And so one has to be able to correct those errors. A lot of times contractors, they get averse to this, that no, we've done what was in the drawing. Now, if this needs to be changed, it's going to be extra. So I think there's got to be a little wiggle room for correction, just
Some
for the
margin
success
for-
of the project, right?
Correct. The greater goal is, of course, the project.
Exactly.
so-
Exactly. Yeah. And then the client is interested to know their payment terms. That's where it starts and ends. How much of a leeway do they get in terms of payment terms?
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, your firm has done a lot of work in Goa as well, right? I mean, you guys are doing work in Mumbai in your urban locations, but also in fancy locations like holiday home locations. You guys have done a lot of work in Goa, right? Tell me something. How is Goan architecture different from architecture in other coastal areas of India?
So I think we have to look at history a little bit, and if you see historically, all our kind of the sort of old settlements of India, or even the coastal settlements, are like just mighty beautiful. Like if you go to
beautiful
any places in Kerala, down south, Pondicherry, right, the whole French settlement. What is like distinctly different with Goa is, I think, on a more emotional level, the vibe. So sure, there are amazing Portuguese homes, and there are these beautiful cathedrals everywhere you go in Goa, and you see these red tile roofs, which is called the mission tile roofs, that my studio is like deeply in love with, the clay tiles.
Right.
But it's just the way you feel when you're visiting Goa.
Absolutely.
Is kind of like jarringly different.
Yeah.
And that's the main catalyst, I would say. I guess, design, fancy villa, architecture, all that is kind of secondary. I guess it's the way the space or the place makes you feel, which is why a lot of people are drawn towards that state.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I love Goa, and who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
And Goa is so interesting because it's the party place for every Indian.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Goa's got a very old school historical charm vibe as well. From South Goa to North Goa, you'll see the vibe shift, right? From the shacks to those beautiful cathedrals like you spoke of, right? So Goa's definitely got a bit of everything. Now, how does an architect disrupt design in Goa? With those beautiful how do you marry contemporary design with historical Goan Portuguese elements?
Yeah. So it's obviously a very daunting task, because as a firm, I guess what we say is that, okay, we don't know everything, and so first let's start learning, right? And so instead of having that approach of pushing our own agendas, we want to first try and adapt to what is already successful and what is already beautiful, and how can one in today's times better it, right, with our own flair, with design as a tool. So that is the first step. So yeah, like the idea is not to superimpose or to kind of impose something, but to have that attitude of absorbing what's out there. And I think that's when you start seeing results.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Are you a fan of contemporary design in general?
Yes, we are sort of minimally modern kind of. I think that's maybe one of the categories we fall in. I don't know. Like, we don't have any set style.
Right.
So like, even within one client, if you're doing 4 projects, they are again like shockingly different.
Right.
So it's not because something worked here, let's do that, right? So we don't say that to ourselves, like even within the studio.
You keep reinventing your designs.
Yes,
you don't have a
absolutely.
set design that. Okay.
Yes. But to again go back to your question, how do you blend the two? So yes, like I said, it's obviously a lot of deep learning. Studying the existing culture, the existing techniques, existing materials, and how do you kind of reinterpret that with your own sensibilities, right? So over the years, we've picked up, with all the world travel we've done, all the cities I lived and worked in. So enough learning that's happened over the years, that allows us to reinterpret things.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot like what Michelin star chefs do. They pick up an Indian cuisine and they reinvent, make it fancier. right? I think it's something like that, right? When you enter an old place with the old school, like for example, a chef will just take butter chicken and give his own, kind of twist to it and present it differently on a plate. So I think architecture is a bit like that.
Sure. I mean, you have to, because I mean that's why the client has approached you, right? So the fundamental reason is they want freshness. They want that, emergent form to be kind of visualized, to be built within that land parcel, which will further, attract interest, build their brand, right? So on a fundamental level, yes, you have to do that, and that's what we always seek out to do, to bring that freshness of idea.
What are the popular areas, Jugal, in Goa? Like, what would you invest if you had one area to choose in Goa? Where would you invest?
So there's a place called Aldona,
Aldo. Okay.
which is like on the eastern side of Highway 66. Now this is the new highway that connects Panjim all the way to Mopa. And so the world knows of Goa as, let's say, Anjuna Beach or, Candolim, right? So it's obviously shifted. The interest has shifted. And Aldona happens to be a very beautiful village, right after Moira, National, all these places. And it's very peaceful, very quaint. It's got its own topography. So you get like a mix of, field, like if you want to be next to a huge expansive field, you've got great land there. You want to be next to a river, there is a beautiful river that flows there. And it's also got a very small and nice sense of community, with the people of Aldona. So it's not infiltrated as much as yet.
Like Asagaon?
Yes. So, which is what I like about Aldona. Yeah.
Now, of course, Goa and the rest of India also, we have strict CRZ laws. For those who don't know, CRZ laws have various restrictions from 0 to 500 meters from the high tide line, from the coast, bunch of restrictions, right? Depending on which CRZ zone your land falls in. So, with the CRZ laws and of course I'm sure the relevant height restrictions in Goa, how does that affect your work? Well, I'm sure a lot of people must be wanting sea view.
Correct.
So how do you play around that?
So I think anything sea touching is a myth. It doesn't exist. Right?
I'm glad you said it. So yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't exist. I mean, so there's land next to the water, but you can't build on it. Legally, you can't build on it. Right. So one has to look out for plots or land that are slightly elevated, which have that setback, that legal setback from the water's edge, and where you are able to kind of have a more of a panorama of the water as opposed to direct access of the water, right?
Right.
So we always encourage something that is high up, elevated, even if it's far, because even that little glimpse of the water is quite calming, and it gives you that that sense of place, I feel.
Correct.
Yeah. So we are always looking at high terrain plots. How does height restriction impact us? So largely all these coastal towns also don't have flat lands. Lands are contoured, right? So that is again a challenge one has to kind of understand.
That increases your construction costs as well?
It does, because every time you excavate, you've got to build a retaining wall. And it's a heavy duty concrete wall that costs a lot, right? But again, the hill cutting laws are very strict. Even the land filling laws are quite strict. So there's only so much you can cut and so much you can fill. So as a designer, you've got to have the ability to tackle that kind of a land in a way that is accessible by foot, where a car can gradually climb up, where the ramp ratios are in sync with human proportions, right? And the massing of the structure isn't horrendous, right? So you have to look at all these kit of parts and then bring something together.
Which takes me to my next question. As an architect, right now, both from regulatory and design point of view, how do you shortlist a land? Do you prefer a certain type of land parcels? Because the way we look at land is purely regulatory, right? But from a design sense, especially, right? How does it work for you? Like, When you see a land, do you straight away start imagining how a structure or a villa will look on that land? Okay, यहाँ bedroom होना चाहिए. This should be the hall. This should be the canopy and a deck. How does that work with you?
No, not really. I guess what we are really hungry for are the initial keywords that come from the client, right? So every client has a fair bit of good idea on what they want, right? And so they try to describe it in maybe image form, or they'll show us something, or they'll try to sketch something, right? Or they'll just like throw words. And so those words are very critical for us. That's what we really catch on to. We try to understand.
Interesting.
Because that initial brief is like unfiltered. And, if you're able to capitalize on that, the product is always successful, right? But no, we don't start looking at, okay, that's your room. And no, because so it starts with the master plan, so how you entering the space, where's the east west, where's my sun path, where do I want my garden. So we do the zoning first, like the larger zoning, and then we get down to the nitty-gritties of the rooms and where what's going, right? So again, different clients have different requirements. Some want like a elevated pool up on the first floor, which is like a hanging pool. Some want a pool next to the garden. So it really depends on what they want.
Is Vastu a big thing in designing?
Yes, if you're a private homeowner, I guess pretty much everyone.
A lot of clients come to you with
pretty much
the
90% of our clients, they have a Vastu guideline, and instead of revolting, we in fact welcome it. Right. So we always tell them, send us your Vastu guideline upfront, so we will try to respect as much of that as we can.
As an architect, sorry to cut you off, when does Vastu for you, of course it makes sense to a certain extent, right? But when does it stop making sense for you as an architect? Because there has to be
when we start getting emails on about this is the color you should not use, or can you like make that roof smaller because I don't want a high pitch there. When we start getting more formal suggestions, as in where the shape and the massing of the structure is dictated by Vastu, I guess that's when it gets problematic, right? Because that's our forte, right? That's how we make buildings beautiful,
right?
So we want to fulfill it on the layout stage for sure. We want to respect it. We want to respect your directions.
Of course, the orientation is of course key.
Yes. So that you have that peace of mind. But I mean, when it trickles down to aesthetics, that's when it's problematic. Yeah. There's no polite way to say this.
There's no fair enough. I'm sure it puts you in an awkward situation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Jugal, where do you see Goa real estate going in general? And a follow-up question to that is, are Airbnb owners there actually making money? Because there's so much supply in Goa already.
Yeah. So I think Goa's, has kept that appeal on. I guess, people want to travel, people want to be there. In fact, now even monsoon season has really picked up in Goa, which is kind of odd because monsoon is when, all the beach-facing shacks shut down because of the high tide, right? But people are still visiting Goa during monsoons. So I think they are seeing now a different side of Goa, I guess. And which is why Airbnb is still in demand. And I guess vacation rentals are doing well in Goa. And we are seeing enough queries on, new developers who want to launch projects or who want to build just to rent out. So this is not even for private consumption. They just want to build and rent out. So, if someone is taking this level of a risk, I'm sure it's leading to something.
Okay. So Airbnb owners are making money in Goa, which is why we keep seeing more and more villas come up.
Yes.
Okay, nice. Good, yeah, because I think so many people from India, I think 1.4 billion people alone, that's the population of India.
Yeah.
And plus you also see Goa to be like an international market of sorts. I think it's one of the most visited places by foreigners, I think Rajasthan and Goa are the most visited places,
True.
if I'm not mistaken. What materials should you work with, especially during construction in coastal regions?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess it starts with again monetizing and capitalizing on the local resources.
Right.
Right. So if we realize that there is a rich resource bank within this particular location or this region, we first want to explore that.
So
right? So it could be in the form of, like if you're building in Panchgani or Mamleshwar, the red laterite brick.
yeah,
is-
Chira, right?
Exactly, yeah. It's really popular.
Indigenous material basically.
Yeah,
of
it
that
keeps the
place.
building cool, it's thick,
Right.
very easily available. The locals.
Nature is so, nature's got that thing going, right? If you use the natural,
Yeah.
material there, it'll always
Yes.
do well for that particular
Yeah, absolutely.
region.
Because I mean, you're reducing your headaches, right? I mean, the headache of getting it transported from a city, dealing with a supplier that's sitting remotely. There is risk of material getting damaged. So you are saving yourself a lot of headache and money by exploring what's out there. And I guess with local material, what we've also figured and understood is comes the local skill set and the local talent, right? So, in most of these tropical homes or the tropical architecture, there is a very extensive use of clay tiles, permeable screens, that are jali systems, right, which allow air to pass into the house or the space. So these are design systems that are built where you don't need any foreign entity. You don't need like someone who's a contractor from the city. A local can very easily do it at a local cost. So for us, the materials that we really kind of love using is the Portuguese mission tile, the red tile, which is on
Yes,
the
we've,
roof.
we've seen that,
Yes.
I think, in
So yeah, I mean we've done some amazing stuff out of it. We've really pushed how it can be applied on a very complex surface, which is like a parabolic surface, and each tile is around 2.2 kilos in weight, and one house had around 2,200 tiles.
that's a lot of
Yeah,
weight.
and they were all sort of dry cladded with a screw. So we really enjoyed that whole process of first, drawing, designing, and then taking it to site.
Right.
And it also helped the entire patio. There was a huge deck that was 70 feet long by 10 feet, which was completely suspended in air. Like it had no columns, no footings. So it was just like this semi-open space that opened from the living room, where people get to party, hang out. You can see the sunset. You can see the forest behind. So that tile really helped this space from harsh sunlight and water coming inside. So you get the best of both worlds.
Right. Interesting. Any material that is a strict no-no to use in a coastal area,
That's a tough one.
or a particular material you just don't like working with? Is there anything that you like just don't like a certain type of material?
I would say, I mean, it's not really a material that's really known. I mean, I would say cement blocks. I just find them very mundane.
Right.
I don't think they help in the insulation of the building.
Correct.
They are more popular in urban areas, where a builder wants to erect a 50-floor tower and it's really fast
Right.
and very quick. But beyond that, I don't know how it helps. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
28% GST on cement, by the way, that's just still, I can't fathom that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, speaking of sustainability, you have always you're a big proponent of, sustainability. Tell me something, are green buildings just a trend? Because look, green homes are expensive than normal homes. At least the green buildings we've seen, builders selling apartments in certified green buildings are quite expensive compared to normal homes. Do you think clients find that 5 or 10% increment a deal breaker, and people don't buy into green homes because of the cost factor?
Yeah. So there's two types of green revolutions that are happening. One is obviously at that certification stage, for larger projects like hotels and larger skyscrapers, right? where that certification also leads to a lot of other things, in terms of tax benefits and global accreditation, right? So that's one thought process. The other is at a more sort of grounded level, or more on a design level, right? How can you better buildings? So as a society, we have this notion that emergent forms aren't sustainable, or if any part of a design space is experientially gratifying, it's not sustainable, but in fact someone's selfish ambition to make it good looking, that is what we feel as society, right? But we have a very different take on this sustainability. We feel that anything sustainable needs to firstly reshape with time, and has to be malleable enough to kind of change as the design goes, right? So for example, like I gave you the example of that roofing tile, correct? So historically we've seen that roofing tile as a gable pitch, this like very simple pitch that works in most Portuguese homes. So the idea here was, how do you push the limits of that roof tile to not only look beautiful, but also to kind of help the house stay cool and protected from heavy rainfall, right? So that is our take on sustainability, and that is how we in our small way try to kind of push the limits of what we feel is sustainable.
Right. Now, your firm is strongly, you all have spoken a lot about ex-urban locations. Can you tell us what an ex-urban location means?
So if you remember, like back in 2014, the UN had come up with its population report, where they enlightened the world with urban rural, right? And so what they said is, by 2050, 66% of the world's population will be living in cities.
Right.
So that data is now passé, right? But what we found interesting is that if you look at the landmass that cities kind of cover within the earth, is only 3%. Cities. Rural areas cover around 13%. 71% is water.
Correct.
So that leaves you with this window of 12% landmass that is like uncharted, neglected territories across the world. Right. Which is, I believe, the next big thing, right? And which we feel is the ex-urban. So it's essentially the space between the rural and the urban. So it's like, these are two extremes, and what is in between, which is again ever shifting. This boundary is also ever shifting.
Correct.
So what Alibag used to be like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and now, it's obviously now the shape is being redefined. The entire territories are like pushing inward.
Absolutely.
So these are ex-urban locations.
Right. So rural becomes ex-urban, which becomes urban.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
So ex-urban is something between a rural and an urban location.
Correct. Yes.
And you feel ex-urban is the next big thing for development right
Absolutely. Now? We've got 5 sites in ex-urban locations. We've got something just on the edge of Goa between Maharashtra.
Right.
We are doing 2 beautiful villas by the river Tirakol.
Right.
And again, a place nobody's ever heard about.
Right.
So these are the new emergent locations, where which really excite us.
Correct.
As
and they're kind of close to urban locations as well, so
Absolutely.
it makes it practical to actually even go there for a staycation.
Yeah. So
compared to a total rural location.
Yeah, like Mojem Beach is 20 minutes from there. So
right.
It's not too bad.
Right. What do you prefer? You prefer hill view or sea view? Just wanted to put that in there.
To be on a hill with a sea view.
You want both?
Both.
What would be the construction cost of constructing a villa in Goa?
So we are looking in the range of, if you're kind of dividing the two, the civil and the interior finishing. Right. So the civil costs anywhere between 1,500 rupees to 2,000 rupees.
That's just for the RCC.
That's just for the skeleton.
Right.
Right. And then for the interiors, if it's obviously a private home, it's like far more. There's no limit. I can't even define it right now.
Yeah.
But if you are looking at a development, it costs around at least 8 to 10,000 rupees on a square feet. Yeah, just the finishing bit of it. But for us, there is a third layer, which is the facade of the house or the facade of the building, which also requires some level of work, right? So, that photo that you see there, which is one of our projects in Morgym, which has that nice infantry-like, element. So these elements also cost, right? Uh, Someone has to build it. We are going to make it out of pure wood,
Correct.
solid wood. So these are costs that one cannot anticipate before you start the design process. Yeah.
So what's the most expensive part in the entire home, according to you?
So I would say it's definitely windows.
Oh,
It's a high cost because like most of our projects are very airy, where they're very transparent. We love to capture the inside to the outside to the inside, and so they require nice seamless window systems.
and are doors expensive as well? Like, is there a
Absolutely,
significant chunk?
yeah.
Also, you had mentioned the best time to start construction in the year is November, when you just kind of gotten over with the monsoons. I'm assuming nobody wants to dig during the monsoons, right? Does that save construction cost? If you start in November, does it save your overall project life cycle's construction cost?
Yes, absolutely. Because your labor is not going to run away, right? So you're not going to extend it into like an unforeseen deadline, right? So everything is time bound, correct? You are leveraging the most of that dry season. So there's a time schedule that gets followed, as opposed to us chasing a team that's not on site,
Right.
or us battling the weather.
Right.
So you're definitely saving a lot of money,
Right.
if you're starting at the right time.
Right. Would you recommend building a basement in a villa in a coastal area?
Absolutely not.
No? No chance?
No.
What about flat roofs?
Flat roofs, again, I mean, if you're smart enough to have some kind of a sloping pitch within, where you're managing water, yeah, sure. I mean, you could get away with that, but I think common sense says that water needs a slope.
Slanting, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Are you a fan of rainwater harvesting in general?
Water is scarce. I mean, it's very difficult. So, sure, we are talking about all these exotic locations and all these fancy villas, but they have a huge issue of daily running water, right? So if you are able to create catchment areas within the plot, if the Vastu consultant allows.
I'm sure there's a zone for that water.
Exactly, because apparently anything that's flowing is like negative. So
Right. So doesn't work.
yeah. So yeah, why not? I mean, we want to preserve water.
Right. What are some of the biggest mistakes, or rather, let's say, what is the one big mistake architects make?
You mean in general?
Yeah, in general.
In general, right? That's a tough one.
Yeah. Or how about we rephrase this to what is one big mistake that you made perhaps in the start of your career?
Okay. I guess we spent a lot of time, fulfilling the mission of paying bills for the office. I guess, because, that meant that, one had to do a lot of inconsequential work, projects that never got published,
Right.
designs that, we don't talk about, right?
Right.
So I guess, if we had gotten out of that rut a little sooner, I guess that would have been a good call.
Right.
But then, it happened eventually because, we got really frustrated with the limited scale.
Right.
And, one fine day, we just had to say enough, we can't do this.
Right.
So, and then we just like deliberately stopped.
Right.
Like we just stopped doing those small projects.
I have a question for you. You spoke of rejection fee, right? Do you think a young architect can charge that when you're just starting out?
They should. I mean, it's not about young or senior. I guess, ultimately it's your work. Right. A client has come to you demanding work or asking for work. You're spending X number of hours or days behind his project.
Right.
So whatever small fee, it's not about how much you're getting paid, but I think the fact that that person is willing to pay and honor and value your time is what matters.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Fair enough. So, sometimes as a young architect, you perhaps do anything to get that main contract, and you might just go out of your way, change your scope of work. Does that happen to architects?
I mean, luckily now we are living in better times, and I've seen that change in the last 12 years. Ever since I moved back from the US, there is obviously a big change in the professionalism, the way people handle consultants, the way contracts are honored. So, yes, I'm seeing a lot of positive direction, yeah, and a positive change in the client-architect relationship. Yes, yes, but yeah, I mean, one shouldn't underestimate or one shouldn't like shortchange yourself just because you're starting out. I mean, you have some skill set to offer. I mean, you went to an architecture school, you got an architectural degree, so I mean, you are something, right?
Right.
So
Just have that confidence and just say
yeah,
it to the
absolutely.
client.
I mean, this working for free never works.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's never led to anything
Right.
successful or
And
long
I think,
term.
at least when we talk about real estate brokerage and agents, right? That's the community I'm from.
Yeah,
You're only paid, it's always success based,
yeah,
right? You can perhaps show a client 50 apartments or 50 land options. And if he doesn't, kind of buy any, you can't charge a rejection fees.
so tell me about
Right.
it. How do you feel about that?
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you work. I've had actually clients where I've worked. At least my team and I collectively 2 years on certain requirements, right? Some complex land transactions at 2 years, and it all goes to shit after 2 years. Doesn't convert, and you don't get paid anything, and that's the nature of the industry. And I feel like if I end up asking for a rejection fee in brokerage, I'll be the first to ask.
Yeah.
And the client will just tell me, listen, please get out. Like, I don't think it's not even a market convention in the from the industry I come from, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like, at least in ours, that's why agents are so used to getting rejected all the time, and it can get very, very frustrating. So I know definitely where you guys are coming from, because you tend to put in so much work, physical work. You're always out there in the field showing properties out there in the sun, and if it doesn't convert,
Yeah.
you don't get anything. So
I truly agree and understand.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's kind of brutal. out there as
Absolutely,
well. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yes,
Fair enough.
yes.
Jugal, I had an absolute blast talking to you, and thank you so much for your time. I just want to ask you one question before we part off, and that is your future plans. What kind of projects are you going to pick up? What interests you? Just if you tell us about your future projects that you're picking up?
So I guess we've gotten very busy in Bombay, and so there were some things we wanted to do as an office, which we are now able to do, and starting with this office tower that we're doing in Bandra on Main Turner Road. And Bandra's always been this, this love for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moves to Bombay, or who's ever lived in Bombay. So we're getting to do something really important. It's for a developer. They are not even going to sell the building. It's a whole office building with very premium retail on the ground, first and second floor, and yeah, that's really exciting. We've also started a few apartment buildings in and around Mumbai region, like ground plus 22 floors height. So that's also kind of increasing our sort of square footage built up every year, right? And as an office, I've always felt the need to participate on a social level as well.
Right.
So how can we, in our own small way, contribute or value add through design, right, to the common man? And so 5 years ago, we started this airbox initiative. It's airbox is basically like a so in India we don't have design patents, but there's something called the Design Act. So it's like a registered design idea, right? It's a prefabricated modular system that kind of can be versatile in its use. 5 years ago, we were really focusing on the issue of sanitation, within India. So how can you improve sanitation or the experience of using a public utility in the country, right? How can design better that experience? So we created Airbox, which was a self-ventilating unit, that didn't require any air conditioned, no fan, nothing.
How does that happen? How does a self-ventilating unit work?
So it was basically made out of a shipping container, and that again goes back to my love for prefabricated architecture. Things that are made in a factory, or things with modular proportions. Where there are set sizes, and so where you can really scale your ideas, right? So we essentially took a cargo box, we sliced it from the bottom, tilted it open, and allowed air to kind of pass through the bottom and come out from the top. And because again, within the sanitation space, we wanted to really address the issue of stench within the public utilities. And so Airbox successfully did that. And there was no client, by the way, for that project. It was totally self-funded, self-motivated effort.
Right.
Where me and my team, we camped out in a workshop, in a fabricator's workshop. We built the whole thing with our own hands. And finally, we went ahead and donated that to Pune Smart City. It was inaugurated on Women's Day by a woman mayor. And it kind of helped almost 80 or 100 girl students on a daily basis. So as an evolving idea to Airbox, now we are also looking at dwelling, like affordable housing units, which are again, which can again be scaled. So things that are prefabricated, made in a workshop, and just literally deployed to a site. Right. So that's really exciting for me, and soon next year we'd like to launch it. We'll be building the first prototype for that again, and showcasing it to the public.
Right. Now, as an architect, let me just ask you one more. As an architect, what is your take on 3D printing in the construction industry? Do you see it taking it off?
Absolutely. So again, a question that ties back to your last question. So within this housing unit, we are exploring two different typologies altogether. One is a locally crafted unit, which will use materials like bamboo and a clay tile and stuff that is readily available at zero cost or like very little cost. So which will be a more Indian version of the Indian craft. And the second typology is the 3D printing. So, where we want to showcase and we want to communicate to the public that this is also a new tool and a new technique that one can use to make things faster and more precise, right? So yes, it's really picking up. I have a few, friends from the industry who are already working and who are already executing projects with 3D printing.
Right. Yeah. But don't you think the height issues there in terms of building tall structures? Do you think we can build a 70-meter structure with just purely 3D printing right now?
I mean, sooner or later we'll get there.
Yeah, but currently, I think the technology is good for ground floors, G+1 at the max.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I think construction technology is going to change drastically in the coming 10 years. Super excited to see how that unfolds. And Jugal, what do you prefer designing? Right. I promise this is my last question. What do you prefer designing? A commercial office space or a residential home?
I personally like to do things that have more of a public impact. And so residential is again fulfilling like one man's agenda or an entity, right? We really love the space of the institutional campus design or even museums for that matter, where you are able to celebrate Indian art, where you are able to celebrate the craft of the region, where you're really able to create this environment where tens of thousands of people will be visiting and will be experiencing the culture of that place. I guess that to me is really interesting. Institutes and schools, again, they are sort of places of knowledge, and I think there's something very sacred about it. So if we are able to do an interesting school design, I think that would be really rewarding, more rewarding than doing a villa or a commercial office or something to that effect.
Interesting.
Yeah.
More noble for sure.
Yeah, and I guess it's I think there's more freedom in design as well. Yeah.
Great, Jugal. I had an absolute blast. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope to
Thanks,
see you
Mayank.
again.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. We need
season
to
two.
do this again.
Absolutely
I hope you
great.
love the studio.
Love, fantastic.
Yeah.
Shows us that we are an architect's, kind of office with the design elements and everything. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Perfect.
Man.
Cheers. Thank you.
Awesome.